Welcome to Happy Day Story Time. Today we are going to read a story. First, we're going to be doing the daily devotion with Daniel, and then we're going to be reading the Bible, and then we're going to be doing substance, and then we're going to be reading the Two Towers. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the bell, and the video. I think we are on chapter 4 of the Two Towers.
Book 4.
Book 4 of the Two Towers. So, I hope you enjoy. Here's my brother to do daily devotions with Daniel. Hi, Mom.
Hello, I'm Daniel, and now for Devotions with Daniel. Okay, so today's the 29th, right?
Yes.
Right, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So 29th, perception versus reality. Why do the wicked live and become old, yes, become mighty in power? Job 21:7. Most people agree that perception is at least 90% of reality, and perception is often more influential than reality. What we perceive to be true influences us more than what is true. Take the perception many Christians have of the wealthy and worldly. It appears that everything the wealthy touches turns to gold. They have more than enough money to smooth out life's daily inconveniences and to do whatever they want without the limitations experienced by the average person, especially the average Christian. Is that really true? Does the external appearance of abundance and carefree living mean those without God are truly happy? Asaph, the psalmist, thought so until he contemplated the end of those without God. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end. Psalm 73:17. The true test of human contentedness is not wealthy, but the answer to the questions, why am I here, and what happens when I die? If you are ever prone to envy those in the world, pray for them while thanking God that you know why you are here and why you will spend eternity. Okay. The humble Christian is far happier in a cottage than the wicked in a palace.
Hello! How are you doing today? My name is David, and we are going to tell you a story today. And we're on chapter 9 of 2 Samuel, so that is where we will read. This is the English Standard Version, and let me begin. And David said, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David. And the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" And he said, "I am your servant." And the king said, "Is there not still someone of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in his feet." The king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lodebar." Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir and the son of Amiel at Lodebar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, Mephibosheth, say that 5 times fast. And he answered, Behold, I am your servant. And David said to him, Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage and said, What is your servant, that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I? Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson. And you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. 15 sons, wow. And 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both his feet. That is the end of 2 Samuel chapter 9. So, the next thing that we have is the synopsis. I know it's been a while since we've done this, but we are approximately halfway through Lord of the Rings, which is the longest book that we have read to date. And I thought that we could just do a quick synopsis of what has happened so far in the story. So, obviously Bilbo got the ring, because we read that in The Hobbit. Bilbo got the ring. It is determined that it is just a ordinary ring. There's nothing magical about it. And when he becomes invisible, it's actually an illusion. Okay. Alright, so that wasn't true.
I'm going to go get the laundry so I can fold it here.
Alright, so that wasn't true. So then, once they find out that it's a ring of power, they run off and try to hide the ring, and Sauron finds them and drags them under the ground and kills them.
Timmy killed them again.
I think I'm being summoned away. I sense a giant hook taking me off the stage now, and Kimberly is going to say how it really happened.
And I am the hook.
So, what actually happened so far is Bilbo, he did get the ring, and it is a ring of power, the one ring to rule them all. So, he basically kept it in at his house for, I think it was like 50 years, something like that. And then Frodo kept it there for a while, too, after Bilbo's birthday shenanigans.
What about Gollum?
Haven't gotten there yet. So then Bilbo gave the ring to Frodo, and Gandalf he realized,
ran off to the mountains.
Yeah, he ran off, realized it was a ring of power, ran back, and told him, "Hey, you gotta go now." And then Sam's like, "Hey, I want to come." After, like, what happened actually was Gandalf pulled him in through a window because he was eavesdropping, and then he's like, "Go with us or I'll turn you into a frog," or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it was go with us or I'll turn you into a toad.
And then after that, they start going, and they make it like this far on the map. And then Strider, aka Aragorn, basically got them all the way to Rivendell in like practically a week. A few weeks.
It took a long time for them to get to Rivendell.
Yeah. It took a long time for them to get to Bree, though.
Anyway, let's do the short version, Kim.
Sure. Okay, then they go down to, they go through the mines of Moria, And I almost said the Mines of Mordor. And then they go to the forest and they go
Who
down.
dies in the Mines of Moria?
No one.
Gandalf.
Well, they lose Gandalf.
Yeah, they lose Gandalf.
Gandalf got
and-
lost, fell in water, and
Hey, JJ, you're gonna knock it over.
please stop.
And then, then they take out. Well, what happens is, Merry and Pippin, they get captured. I think it was Boromir died. Frodo and Sam ran off, and everybody else, it was Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, right? They all went after Merry and Pippin, who are captured by dwarves, and they make it.
Captured by orcs.
I am tripping over my words. I am really sorry. They're captured by orcs, not dwarves. I'm thinking.
JJ, go sit down.
Okay. Then they go over there. They have a whole thing with the Riders of Rohan, and Rohan Solo. I'm kidding.
You
And-
just mixed your universe.
I
See
know.
what you did there. So
And then
what do they do at Helm's Deep?
they have a fight, a big
With a
battle.
with a bunch of orcs?
Yeah, not dwarves.
Their galaxies.
And then they go where?
Then they go to Isengard, and only to find out that the Ints have flooded it. And then they talk with Saruman, whichever one it is.
Because that's not confusing at all, is it?
Having two bad guys who have practically the same name. And then what happens is we are going to see what Sam and Frodo have been doing.
Okay, so that is the short version. Yes, it's not confusing at all because we have Moria and Mordor. We have Saruman and Sauron. We have Isengard and Buckland. I don't know, they don't sound anything alike. All right, so
Iceland.
all right, so we are, as she said, on book 4 of Lord of the Rings, which is the second part of the Two Towers, and we are going to begin very shortly. Here it is, written in Elvish script. I don't know what that says. I don't read Elvish script, but there it is. All right. There's some runes at the top also, so just... Chapter 1. Are we good? Okay. Chapter 1. The Taming of Sméagol. Well, master, we're in a fix, and no mistake, said Sam Gamgee. He stood despondently with hunched shoulders beside Frodo and peered out with puckered eyes into the gloom. It was the third evening since they had fled from the company. As far as they could tell, they had almost lost count of the hours during which they had climbed and labored among the barren slopes and stones of the Emyn sometimes retracting their steps because they could find no way forward, sometimes discovering that they had wandered in a circle back to where they had been hours before. Yet on the whole they had worked steadily eastward, keeping as near as they could find a way to the outer edge of this strange twisted knot of hills. But always they found its outward faces sheer, high, and impassable. Frowning over the plain below, beyond its tumbled skirts lay livid, festering marshes, where nothing moved, and not even a bird was to be seen. The hobbit stood now on the brink of a tall cliff, bare and bleak, its feet wrapped in mist, and behind them rose the broken highlands, crowned with drifting cloud. A chill wind blew from the east. Night was gathering over the shapeless lands before them. The sickly green of them was fading to a sullen brown. Far away to the right, the Anduin that had gleamed fitfully in sun breaks during the day was now hidden in shadow, but their eyes did not look beyond the river back to Gondor, to their friends, to the lands of men. South and east they stared to where, at the edge of the oncoming night, a dark line hung, like distant mountains of motionless smoke. Every now and again a tiny red gleam far away flickered upwards on the rim of earth and sky. "What a fix!" said Sam. "That's the one place in all the lands we've ever heard of that we don't want to see any closer. And that's the one place we're trying to get to. And that's just where we can't get nohow. We've come the wrong way altogether, seemingly. We can't get down, and if we did get down, we'd find all the green land a nasty bog, I warrant. Phew! Can you smell it?" He sniffed at the wind. "Yes, I can smell it," said Frodo, but he did not move, and his eyes remained fixed, staring out toward the dark line and the flickering flame. "Mordor," he muttered under his breath. "If I must go there, I wish I could come there quickly and make an end." He shuddered. The wind was chilly and yet heavy with an odor of cold decay. "Well," he said, at last withdrawing his eyes, "we cannot stay here all night, fix or no fix. We must find a more sheltered spot and camp once more, and perhaps another day will show us a path." "Or another, and another, and another," muttered Sam. "Or maybe no day. We've come the wrong way." "I wonder," said Frodo. "It's my doom, I think, to go to that shadow yonder, so that a way will be found. But will good or evil show it to me? What hope we had was in speed. Delay plays into the enemy's hands, and here I am, delayed. Is it the will of the Dark Tower that steers us? All my choices have proved ill. I should have left the company long before and come down from the north, east of the river and of the Emyn Muil, and so over the hard of battle plain to the passes of Mordor. But now it isn't possible for you and me alone to find a way back, and the orcs are prowling on the east bank. Every day that passes is a priceless day lost. I am so tired, Sam. I don't know what is to be done. What food have we got left?" "Only those, what do you call them? Limbus, Mr. Frodo. A fair supply, but they are better than naught by a long bite. I never thought, though, when I first set tooth in them, that I should ever come to wish for a change, but I do now. A bit of plain bread and a mug, aye, half a mug of beer would go down proper. I've lugged my cooking gear all the way from the last camp, and what use has it been? Not to make a fire with, for a start, and not to cook, not even grass." They turned away and went down into the stony hollow. The westering sun was caught into clouds, and night came swiftly. They slept as well as they could, for the cold turn and turn about in a nook among great jagged pinnacles of weathered rock. At least they were sheltered from the easterly wind. Did you see them again, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam, as they sat, stiff and chilled, munching wafers of limbus on the cold grey of the early morning. "No," said Frodo. "I've heard nothing, and seen nothing, for 2 nights now." "Nor me," said Sam. "Grrr, those eyes did give me a turn, but perhaps we've shaken him off at last. The miserable slinker, Gollum. I'll give him Gollum in his throat, if I ever get my hands on his neck." "I hope you never need to," said Frodo. "I don't know how he followed us, but it may be that he's lost us again, as you say. In this dry, bleak land we can't leave many footprints, nor much scent, even for his snuffling nose." "I hope that's the way of it," said Sam. "I wish we could get rid of him for good." "So do I," said Frodo, "but he's not my chief trouble. I wish we could get away from these hills. I hate them. I feel all naked on the east side, stuck up here with nothing but the dead flats between me and that shadow yonder. There's an eye in it. Come on. We've got to get down today somehow." But that day wore on, and when afternoon faded toward evening, they were still scrambling along the ridge and had found no way of escape. Sometimes, in the silence of that barren country, they fancied that they heard faint sounds behind them, a stone falling, or the imagined step of flapping feet on the rock. But if they halted and stood still listening, they heard no more, nothing but the wind sighing over the edges of the stones. Yet even that reminded them of breath softly hissing through sharp teeth. All that day the outer ridge of the Emmanuel had been bending gradually northward as they struggled on. Along its brink there now stretched a wide tumbled flat of scored and weathered rock, cut every now and again by trench-like gullies that sloped steeply down to deep notches in the cliff face. To find a path in these clefts, which were becoming deeper and more frequent, Frodo and Sam were driven to their left, well away from the edge, and they did not notice that for several miles they had been going slowly but steadily downhill. The cliff top was sinking toward the level of the lowlands. At last they were brought to a halt. The ridge took a sharper bend northward and was gashed by a deeper ravine. On the further side it reared up again many fathoms at a single leap. A great grey cliff loomed before them, cut sheer down as if by a knife stroke. They could go no further forward, and must turn now either west or east. But west would lead them only into more labor and delay, back toward the heart of the hills. East would take them to the outer precipice. "There's nothing for it but to scramble down this gully, Sam," said Frodo. "Let's see what it leads to." "A nasty drop, I'll bet," said Sam. The cleft was longer and deeper than it seemed. Some way down they found a few gnarled and stunted trees, the first they had seen for days, twisted birch for the most part, but here and there a fir tree. Many were dead and gaunt, bitten to the core by the eastern winds. Once in a milder days there must have been a fair thicket in the ravine, but now, after some 50 yards, the trees came to an end, though old and broken stumps straggled on almost to the cliff's brink. The bottom of the gully, which lay along the edge of the rock fault, was rough with broken stone and slanted steeply down. When they came at last to the end of it, Frodo stooped and leaned out. "Look," he said, "we must have come down a long way, or else the cliff has sunk. It's much lower here than it was, and it looks easier, too." Sam knelt beside him and peered reluctantly over the edge. Then he glanced up at the great cliff rising up, away on their left. "Easier," he grunted. "Well, I suppose it's always easier getting down than up. Those as can't fly can jump." "It would be a big jump still," said Frodo. "Well," he stood for a moment, measuring it with his eyes. "About 18 fathoms, I should guess, not more." "And that's enough," said Sam. "Ugh! How do I hate looking down from a height! But looking's better than climbing." "All the same," said Frodo, "I think we could climb here, and I think we shall have to try. See, the rock is quite different from what it was a few miles back. It has slipped and cracked." The outer fall was indeed no longer sheer, but sloped outward a little. It looked like a great rampart or sea wall, whose foundations had shifted so that its courses were all twisted and disordered, leaving great fissures and long slanting edges that were in places almost as wide as stairs. "And if we're going to try and get down, we had better try at once. It's getting dark early. I think there's a storm coming." The smoky blur of the mountains in the east was lost in a deeper blackness that was already reaching out westwards with long arms. There was a distant mutter of thunder borne on the rising breeze. Frodo sniffed the air and looked up doubtfully at the sky. He strapped his belt outward, his cloak, and tightened it, and settled his light pack on his back. Then he stepped toward the edge. "I'm going to try it," he said. "Very good," said Sam gloomily, "but I'm going first." "You?" said Frodo. "What's made you change your mind about climbing?" "I haven't changed my mind, but it's only sense. Put the one lowest as is most likely to slip. I don't want to come down atop you and knock you off. No sense in killing two with one fall." But before Frodo could stop him, he sat down, swung his legs over the brink, and twisted round, scrabbling with his toes for a foothold. It it is doubtful if he ever did anything braver in cold blood or more unwise. No, no, Sam, you old donkey, said Frodo. You'll kill yourself for certain going over like that without even a look to see what to make for. Come back. He took Sam under the armpits and hauled him up again. Now wait a bit and be patient, he said. Then he lay on the ground, leaning out and looking down, but the light seemed to be fading quickly, though the sun had not yet set. I think we could manage this, he said presently. I think at any rate, and you could too. Or I could at any rate, and you could too if you kept your head and followed me carefully. I don't know how you can be so sure, said Sam. Why, you can't see to the bottom of this light. What if you comes to a place where there's nowhere to put your feet or your hands? Climb back, I suppose, said Frodo. Easy said, objected Sam. Better wait till morning and more light. No, not if I can help it, said Frodo with a sudden strange vehemence. I grudge every hour, every minute. I'm going down to try it out. Don't you follow till I come back or call. Gripping the stony lip of the fall with his fingers, he let himself gently down, and when his arms were almost at full stretch, his toes found a ledge. One step down, he said, and this ledge broadens out to the right. I could stand there without a hold. His words were cut short. The hurrying darkness, now gathering great speed, rushed up from the east and swallowed the sky. There was a dark, splitting crack of thunder right overhead. Searing lightning smote down into the hills. Then came a blast of savage wind, and with it, mingling with its roar, there came a high, shrill shriek. The hobbits had heard just such a cry far away in the marsh as they fled from Hobbiton, and even there in the woods of the Shire it had frozen their blood. Out here in the waste its terror was far greater. It pierced them with cold blades of horror and despair, stopping heart and breath. Sam fell flat on his face. Involuntarily, Frodo loosed his hold and put his hands over his head and ears. He swayed, slipped, and slithered downwards with a wailing cry. Sam heard him and crawled with an effort to the edge. "Master, master!" he called. "Master!" He heard no answer. He found he was shaking all over, but he gathered his breath, and once again he shouted, "Master!" The wind seemed to blow his voice back into his throat, but as it passed, roaring up the gully and away over the hills, a faint answering cry came to his ears. All right, I'm here, but I can't see." Frodo was calling with a weak voice. He was not actually very far away. He had slid and not fallen, and had come up with a jolt to his feet on a wider ledge not many yards lower down. Fortunately, the rock face at this point leaned well back, and the wind had pressed him against the cliff so that he had not toppled over. He steadied himself a little, laying his face against the cold stone, feeling his heart pounding, but either the darkness had grown complete, or else his eyes had lost their sight. All was black about him. He wondered if he had been struck blind. He took a deep breath. Come back, he heard Sam's voice out of the blackness above. "I can't," he said. "I can't see. I can't find any hold. I can't move yet." What can I do, Mr. Frodo? What can I do?" shouted Sam, leaning out dangerously far. Why could not his master see? It was dim, certainly, but not as dark as all that. He could see Frodo below him, a grey, forlorn figure splayed against the cliff, but he was far out of the reach of any helping hand. There was another crack of thunder, and then the rain came. In a blinding sheet mingled with hail, it drove against the cliff, bitter cold. "I'm coming down to you," shouted Sam, though how he hoped to help in that way he could not have said. No, wait!" Frodo called back, more strongly now. "I shall be better soon. I feel better already. Wait. You can't do anything without a rope." "Rope!" cried Sam, talking wildly to himself in his excitement and relief. "Well, if I don't deserve to be hung on the end of one as a warning to numbskulls, you're nowt but a ninny hammer, Sam Gamgee. That's what the gaffer said to me often enough, it being a word of his. Rope!" "Not chattering," said Frodo, now recovered enough to feel both amused and annoyed. "Never mind your gaffer. Are you trying to tell yourself you've got some rope in your pocket? If so, out with it." "Yes, Mr. Frodo, in my pack and all. Carried it hundreds of miles, and I'd clean forgotten it." "Then get busy and let an end down." Quickly Sam unslung his pack and rummaged in it. There indeed at the bottom was a coil of the silken grey rope made by the folk at Lorien. He cast an end to his master. The darkness seemed to lift from Frodo's eyes, or else his sight was returning. He could see the grey line as it came dangling down, and he thought it had a faint silver sheen. Now that he had some point in the darkness to fix his eyes on, he felt less giddy. Leaning his weight forward, he made the end fast round his waist, and then he grasped the line with both hands. Sam stepped back and braced his feet against a stump a yard or two from the edge. Half hauled, half scrambling, Frodo came up and threw himself on the ground. Thunder growled and rumbled in the distance, and the rain was still falling heavily. The hobbits crawled away back into the gully, but they did not find much shelter there. Rills of water began to run down. Soon they grew to a spate that splashed and fumed on the stones and spouted out over the cliffs like the gutters of a vast roof. "I should have been half drowned down there, or washed clean off," said Frodo. "What a piece of luck you had that rope." "Better luck if I'd have thought of it sooner," said Sam. "Maybe you remember them putting the ropes in the boats as we started off in the Elvish country. I took a fancy to it, and I stowed a coil in my pack. Years ago, it seems. It may be a help in many needs," he said. "Haldir, or one of those folk, and he spoke right." "A pity I didn't think of bringing another length," said Frodo, "but I left the company in such a hurry and confusion. If only we had enough we could use it to get down. How long is your rope, I wonder?" Sam paid it out slowly, measuring it with his arms. 5, 10, 20, 30 ells, more or less, he said. Who'd have thought it? Frodo exclaimed. "Ah, who would?" said Sam. "Elves are wonderful folk. It looks a bit thin, but it's tough, and soft as milk to the hand. Packs close, too, and as light as light. Wonderful folk, to be sure." 30 ells, said Frodo, considering. "I believe it would be enough. If the storm passes before nightfall, I'm going to try it." "The rain's nearly given over already," said Sam. "But don't you go doing anything risky in the dim again, Mr. Frodo, and I haven't got over that shriek on the wind yet, if you have. Like a black rider it sounded, but one up in the air if they can fly. I'm thinking we'd best lay up in this crack till night's over. And I'm thinking that I won't spend a moment longer than I need stuck up on the edge with the eyes of the dark country looking over the marshes," said Frodo. With that he stood up and went down to the bottom of the gully again. He looked out, clear sky growing in the east once more. The skirts of the storm were lifting, ragged and wet, and the main battle had passed to spread its great wings over the Emyn Muil, upon which the dark thought of Sauron brooded for a while. Thence it turned, smiting the Vale of Anduin with hail and lightning, and casting its shadow upon Minas Tirith with threat of war. Then, lowering in the mountains and gathering its great spires, it rolled on slowly over Gondor and the skirts of Rohan, until far away the riders on the plain saw its black towers moving behind the sun as they rode into the west. But here, over the desert and the reeking marshes, the deep blue sky of evening opened once more, and a few pallid stars appeared like small white holes in the canopy above the crescent moon. "It's good to be able to see again," said Frodo, breathing deep. "Do you know, I thought for a bit that I had lost my sight. From the lightning or something else worse. I could see nothing at all, until the gray rope came down. It seemed to shimmer somehow." "It does look sort of silver in the dark," said Sam. "Never noticed it before, though I can't remember as I've ever had it out since I first stowed it. But if you're so set on climbing, Mr. Frodo, how are you going to use it? 30 ells, or say, about 18 fathom. That's no more than your guess at the height of this cliff." Frodo thought for a while. "Make it fast to that stump, Sam," he said. "Then I think you shall have your wish this time and go first. I'll lower you, and you need to do more than use your feet and your hands to fend yourself off the rock. Though if you put your weight on some of the ledges and give me a rest, it will help. When you're down, I'll follow. I feel quite myself again now." "Very well," said Sam heavily. "If it must be, let's get it over." He took up the rope and made it fast over the stump nearest to the brink. Then the other end he tied about his own waist. Reluctantly he turned and prepared to go over the edge a second time. It did not, however, turn out half as bad as he had expected. The rope seemed to give him confidence, though he shut his eyes more than once when he looked down between his feet. There was one awkward spot where there was no ledge, and the wall was sheer and even undercut for a short space. There he slipped and swung out on the silver line, but Frodo lowered him slowly and steadily, and it was over at last. His chief fear had been that the rope length would give out while he was still high up, but there was still a good bite on Frodo's hands when Sam came to the bottom and called up, "I'm down!" His voice came up clearly from below, but Frodo could not see him. His gray elven cloak had melted into the twilight. Frodo took rather more time to follow him. He had the rope about his waist, and it was fast above, and he had shortened it so that it would pull him up before he reached the ground. Still, he did not want to risk a fall, and he had not quite Sam's faith in this slender gray line. He found two places, all the same, where he had to trust wholly to it, smooth surfaces where there was no hold even for his strong hobbit fingers, and the ledges were far apart. But at last he too was down. "Well," he cried, "we've done it. We've escaped from the Emyn Muil, and now what's next, I wonder? Maybe we shall soon be sighing for good hard rock under the foot again." But Sam did not answer. He was staring back up the cliff. "Ninny hammers," he said. "Noodles, my beautiful rope. There it is, tied to a stump, and we're at the bottom. Just as nice a little stair for that slinking Gollum as we could leave. Better put up a signpost to say which way we've gone. I thought it seemed a bit too easy. If you can think of any way we could have both used the rope and yet brought it down with us, then you can pass on to me Ninnyhammer, or any other name your gaffer gave you," said Frodo. "Climb up and untie it and let yourself down if you want to." Sam scratched his head. "No, I can't think how, begging your pardon," he said, "but I don't like leaving it, and that's a fact." He stroked the rope's end and shook it gently. "It goes hard parting with anything. I brought out of the elf country, made by Galadriel herself, too. Galadriel, he murmured, nodding his head mournfully. He looked up and gave one last pull to the rope as if in farewell. To the complete surprise of both the hobbits, it came loose. Sam fell over, and the long gray coils slithered silently down on top of them. Frodo laughed. Who tied the rope? He said. A good thing it held as long as it did. To think that I trusted all my weight to your knot. Sam did not laugh. I may not be much good at climbing, Mr. Frodo, he said in injured tones, but I do know something about rope and about knots. It's in the family, as you might say. Why, my granddad and my Uncle Andy after him that was the gaffer's eldest brother, he had a rope walk over by Tyfeld many a year, and I put as fast a hitch over the stump as any one could have done in the Shire or out of it. Then the rope must have broken, frayed on the rock edge, I expect, said Frodo. I bet it didn't, said Sam, in an even more injured voice. He stooped and examined the ends. Nor it hasn't neither, not a strand. Then I'm afraid it must have been the knot, said Frodo. Sam shook his head and did not answer.
Did not?
Okay, did not answer. He was passing the rope through his fingers thoughtfully. Have it your own way, Mr. Frodo, he said at last, but I think the rope came off itself when I called. He coiled it up and stowed it lovingly in his pack. It certainly came, said Frodo, and that's the chief thing. But now we've got to think of our next move. Night will be on us soon. How beautiful the stars are, and the moon. They do cheer the heart, don't they? Said Sam, looking up. Elvish they are, somehow, and the moon's growing. We haven't seen him for a night or two in this cloudy weather. He's beginning to give quite a light. Yes, said Frodo, but he won't be full for some days. I don't think we'll try the marshes by the light of half a moon. Under the first shadows of night, they started out of the next stage of their journey. After a while, Sam turned and looked back at the way they had come. The mouth of the gully was a black notch in the dim cliff. I'm glad we've got the rope, he said. We've set a little puzzle for that footpad anyhow. He can try his nasty flappy feet on those ledges. They picked their steps away from the skirts of the cliff among the wilderness of boulders and rough stones, and wet and slippery with the heavy rain. The ground still fell away sharply. They had not gone very far when they came upon a great fissure that yawned suddenly black before their feet. It was not wide, but it was too wide to jump across in the dim light. They thought they could hear water gurgling in its depths. It curved away on their left northward, back toward the hills, and so barred their road in that direction as at any rate while darkness lasted. We had better try a way back southward along the line of the cliff, I think, said Sam. We might find some nook there, or even a cave or something. I suppose so, said Frodo. I'm tired, and I don't think I can scramble among stones much longer tonight, though I grudge the delay. I wish there was a clear path in front of us, then I'd go on till my legs gave way. And I'm just going to check something real fast. They did not find the going any easier at the broken feet of the Emyn, nor did Sam find any nook or hollow to shelter in. Are we okay? And I lost my place. Shelter in. Only bare stony slopes frowned over by the cliff, which now rose again, higher and more sheer as they went back. In the end, worn out, they just cast themselves on the ground under the lee of a boulder, lying not far from the foot of a precipice. There, for some time, they sat huddled mournfully together in the cold, stony night, while sleep crept upon them in spite of all they could do to hold it off. The moon now rode high and clear. Its thin white light lit up the faces of the rocks and drenched the cold, frowning walls of the cliff, turning all the wide looming darkness into a chill, pale gray, scored with black shadows. "Well," said Frodo, standing up and drawing his cloak more closely round him, "you sleep for a bit, Sam, and take my blanket. I'll walk up and down on sentry for a while." Suddenly he stiffened, and stooping, he gripped Sam by the arm. "What's that? What's that?" he whispered. "Look over there on the cliff." Sam looked and breathed in sharply through his teeth. "Shh," he said. "That's what it is. It's that Gollum, snakes and adders. And to think that I thought that we'd puzzle him with our bit of climb. Look at him, like a nasty crawling spider on a wall." Down the face of the precipice, sheer and almost smooth, it seemed in the pale moonlight, a small black shape was moving with its thin limbs splayed out. Maybe its soft clinging hands and toes were finding crevices and holds that no hobbit could ever have seen or used, but it looked as if it were just creeping down on sticky pads like some large prowling thing of insect kind. And it was coming down head first, as if it was smelling its way. Now and again it lifted its head slowly, turning it right back on its long skinny neck, and the hobbits caught a glimpse of two small pale glistening lights, its eyes that blinked at the moon for a moment and then were quickly lidded again. "Do you think he can see us?" said Sam. "I don't know," said Frodo quietly, "but I think not. It is hard even for friendly eyes to see these elven cloaks. I cannot see you in the shadow, even at a few paces, and I've heard that he doesn't like the sun or the moon." "Then why is he coming down just here?" asked Sam. "Quietly, Sam," said Frodo. "He can smell us, perhaps, and he can hear as keen as elves, I believe. I think he has heard something now, our voices probably. We did a lot of shouting away back there, and we were talking far too loudly until a minute ago." "Well, I'm sick of him," said Sam. "He's come once too often for me, and I'm going to have a word with him, if I can. I don't suppose we could give him the slip now, anyway." Drawing his gray hood well over his face, Sam crept stealthily toward the cliff. "Careful," whispered Frodo, coming behind. "Don't alarm him. He's much more dangerous than he looks." The black crawling shape was now 3/4 of the way down, and perhaps 50 feet or less above the cliff's foot. Crouching stone still in the shadow of a large boulder, the hobbits watched him. He seemed to have come to a difficult passage, or to be troubled about something. They could hear him snuffling, and now and again there was a harsh hiss of breath that sounded like a curse. He lifted his head, and they thought they heard him spit. Then he moved on again. Now they could hear his voice creaking and whistling. I need to change my position. I'm gonna try this, see if it's more comfortable. "Ah, cautious, my precious. More haste, less speed. We mustn't risk our neck, must we, precious? No, precious." He lifted his head again, blinked at the moon, and quickly shut his eyes. "We hate it," he hissed. Nasty, nasty, shivery lights it is. It spies on us, precious. It hurts our eyes. He was getting lower now, and the hisses became sharper and clear. Where is it? Where is it, my precious? My precious, it's ours. It is, and we want it. The thieves, the filthy little thieves. Where are they with my precious? Curse them, we hates them. It doesn't sound as if he knew we were here, does it? Whispered Sam. And what's his precious? Does he mean the... Hush, breathed Frodo. He's getting near now, near enough to hear a whisper. Indeed, Gollum had suddenly paused again, and his large head on his scrawny neck was lolling from side to side as if he was listening. His pale eyes were half unlidded. Sam restrained himself, though his fingers were twitching. His eyes, filled with anger and disgust, were fixed on the wretched creature as he now began to move again, still whispering and hissing to himself. At last he was no more than a dozen feet from the ground, right above their heads. From that point there was a sheer drop, for the cliff was slightly undercut, and even Gollum could not find a hold of any kind. He seemed to be trying to twist around so as to go legs first, when suddenly, with a shrill whistling shriek, he fell. As he did so, he curled his legs and arms up round him, like a spider whose descending thread is snapped. Excuse me. Sam was out of his hiding in a flash and crossed the space between him and the cliff foot in a couple of leaps. Before Gollum could get up, he was on top of him. But he found Gollum more than he bargained for, even taken like that, suddenly, off his guard after a fall. Before Sam could get a hold, long legs and arms were wound round him, pinning his arms, and a clinging grip, soft but horribly strong, was squeezing him like slowly tightening cords. Clammy fingers were feeling for his throat. Then sharp teeth bit into his shoulder. All he could do was to butt his hard round head sideways into the creature's face. Gollum hissed and spat, but he did not let go. Things would have gone ill with Sam if he had been alone, but Frodo sprang up and drew Sting from its sheath. With his left hand he drew back Gollum's head by his thin, lank hair, stretching his long neck and forcing his pale, venomous eyes to stare up at the sky. And I just want to show you a picture. This is Frodo with Sting pointed at Gollum, and you can see it in the picture. All right, let's keep going. Let go, Gollum, he said. This is Sting. You have seen it before, once upon a time. Let go, or you'll feel it this time. I'll cut your throat. Gollum collapsed and went as loose as wet string. Sam got up, fingering his shoulder. His eyes smoldered with anger, but he could not avenge himself. His miserable enemy lay groveling on the stones, whimpering, "Don't hurt us! Don't let them hurt us, precious! They won't hurt us, will they? Nice little hobbitses! We didn't mean no harm, but they jumps on us like cats on poor mice as they did, precious, and we're so lonely, Gollum. We'll be nice to them, very nice, if they'll be nice to us, won't we? Yes, yes." "Well, what's to be done with it?" said Sam. "Tie it up so as it can't come sneaking after us no more, I say." "But that would kill us, kills us," whimpered Gollum. "Cruel little hobbitses, tie us up in the cold hard lands, and leave us, Gollum, Gollum." Sobs welled up in his gobbling throat. "No," said Frodo. "If we kill him, we must kill him outright. But we can't do that. Not as things are, poor wretch. He has done us no harm. "Oh, hasn't he?" said Sam, rubbing his shoulder. "Anyway, he meant to, and he means to, I'll warrant. Throttle us in our sleep, that's his plan." "I dare say," said Frodo, "but what he means to do is another matter." He paused for a while in thought. Gollum lay still, but stopped whimpering. Sam stood glowering over him. It seemed to Frodo that he heard quite plainly but far-off voices out of the past. What a pity Bilbo did not stab the vile creature when he had a chance. Pity. It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need. I do not feel any pity for Gollum. He deserves death. Deserves death? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die, and some die that deserve life. Can you give that to them? Then be not too eager to deal out death in the name of justice, fearing for your own safety. Even the wise cannot see all ends. Very well, he answered aloud, lowering his sword. But still I am afraid. And yet, as you are, I will not touch the creature, for now that I see him, I do pity him. Sam stared at his master, who seemed to be speaking to one who was not there. Gollum lifted his head. "Yes, wretched we are, precious," he whined. "Misery, misery! Hobbitses won't kill us. Nice hobbitses." "No, we won't," said Frodo. "But we won't let you go either. You're full of wickedness and mischief, Gollum. You will have to come with us, that's all, while we keep an eye on you. But you must help us if you can. One good turn deserves another." "Yes, indeed," said Gollum, sitting up. "Nice hobbitses. We will come with them. Find them safe paths in the dark. Yes, we will. And where are they going in their cold, hard lands? We wonder. Yes, we wonders." He looked up at them, and a faint light of cunning and eagerness flickered for a second in his pale, blinking eyes. Sam scowled at him and sucked his teeth, but he seemed to sense that there was something odd about his master's mood, and that the matter was beyond argument. All the same, he was amazed at Frodo's reply. Frodo looked straight into Gollum's eyes, which flinched and twisted away. "You know that, or you guess well enough, Sméagol," he said quietly and sternly. "We are going to Mordor, of course, and you know the way there, I believe." "Ah!" said Gollum, covering his ears with his hands, as if such frankness and the open speaking of the names hurt him. "We guess, yes, we guess," he whispered. "And we didn't want to go there, did we? No, precious, not the nice hobbitses. Ashes, ashes and dust, and thirst there is, and pits, and pits, pits and orcs, thousands of orcses. Nice hobbitses mustn't go to those places." "So you have been there," Frodo insisted, "and you're being drawn back there, aren't you?" Yes, no, shrieked Gollum. "Once, by accident it was, wasn't it, precious? Yes, by accident, but we won't go back, no, no." Then suddenly his voice and language changed, and he sobbed in his throat and spoke, but not to them. "Leave me alone, Gollum. You hurt me. Oh, my poor hands, Gollum. I don't want to come back. I can't find it. I am tired. We can't find it, Gollum. Gollum, no, nowhere. They're always awake, dwarves, men, elves, terrible elves with bright eyes. I can't find it. Ah!" He got up and clenched his long hand into a bony, fleshless knot, shaking it toward the east. "We won't," he cried. "Not for you." Then he collapsed again. "Gollum, Gollum," he whimpered, with his face to the ground. Don't look at us. Go away. Go to sleep. He will not go away or go to sleep at your command, Sméagol, said Frodo. But if you really wish to be free of him again, then you must help me. And that, I fear, means finding us a path toward him. But you need not go all the way, not beyond the gates of his land. Gollum sat up again and looked at him under his eyelids. He's over there, he cackled. Always there. Orcs will take you all the way. Easy to find orcs east of the river. Don't ask Sméagol. Poor old Sméagol. He went away long ago, then took his precious, and he's lost now. Perhaps we'll find him again if you come with us, said Frodo. No, never. He's lost his precious, said Gollum. Get up, said Frodo. Gollum stood up and backed away against the cliff. Now, said Frodo, can you find a path easier by day or by night? We're tired, but if you choose the night, we'll start tonight. The big lights hurt our eyes, they do, Gollum whined. Not under the white face. Not yet. It will go behind the hills soon, yes. Rest a bit first, nice hobbitses. Then sit down, said Frodo, and don't move. The hobbits seated themselves beside him, one on either side, with their backs to the stony wall, resting their legs. Then there was no need for any arrangement by word. They knew that they must not sleep for a moment. Slowly the moon went by. Slowly the moon went by. Shadows fell down from the hills, and all grew dark before them. The stars grew thick and bright in the sky above. No one stirred. Gollum sat with his legs drawn up, knees under his chin, flat hands and feet splayed on the ground, his eyes closed, but he seemed tense, as if thinking or listening. Frodo looked across at Sam. Their eyes met, and they understood. They relaxed, leaning their heads back and shuttering their eyes, or seeming to. Soon the sound of their soft breathing could be heard. Gollum's hands twitched a little, hardly perceptibly. His head moved to the left and to the right, and first one eye and then the other eye opened a slit. The hobbits made no sign. Suddenly, with startling agility and speed, straight off the ground with a jump like a grasshopper or a frog, Gollum bounded forward into the darkness. But that was just what Frodo and Sam had expected. Sam was on him before he had gone 2 paces after his spring. Frodo, coming behind, grabbed his leg and threw him. Your rope might prove useful again, Sam, he said. Sam got out the rope. And where were you off to in the cold, hard lands, Mr. Gollum? He growled. We wonders, to find some of your orc friends, I warrant. You nasty, treacherous creature. It's round your neck this rope ought to go, and a tight noose, too. Gollum lay quiet and tried no further tricks. He did not answer Sam, but gave him a swift, venomous look. All we need is something to keep a hold of him, said Frodo. We want him to walk, so it's no good tying his legs, or his arms. He seems to use them as nearly as much. Tie one end to his ankle, and keep a grip on the other end. He stood over Gollum while Sam tied the knot. The result surprised them both. Gollum began to scream, a thin, tearing sound, very horrible to hear. He writhed and tried to get his mouth to his ankle and bite the rope. He kept on screaming. At last Frodo was convinced that he really was in pain, but it could not be from the knot. He examined it and found that it was not too tight, indeed, hardly tight enough. Sam was gentler than his words. "What's the matter with you?" he said. "If you will try to run away, you must be tied. But we don't wish to hurt you." "It hurts us! It hurts us!" hissed Gollum. "It freezes, it bites! Elves twisted it, curse them! Nasty, cruel hobbitses! That's why we tries to escape. Of course it is, precious. We guess they were not cruel. We guess they were cruel hobbitses. They visit elves, fierce elves with bright eyes. Takes it off us. It hurts us." "No, I will not take it off of you," said Frodo. "Not unless," he paused a moment in thought, "not unless there is a promise you can make that I can trust." "But we will swear to do what he wants, yes, yes," said Gollum, still twisting and grabbing his ankle. "It hurts us." "Swear," said Frodo. "Sméagol," said Gollum, suddenly and clearly opening his eyes wide and staring at Frodo with a strange light. "Sméagol will swear on the precious." Frodo drew himself up, and again Sam was startled by his words and his stern voice. "On the precious? How dare you?" he said. "Think! One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. Would you commit your promise to that, Sméagol? It will hold you, but it is more treacherous than you are. It may twist your words. Beware." Gollum cowered. "On the precious! On the precious!" he repeated. "And what would you swear?" asked Frodo. "To be very, very good," said Gollum. Then, crawling to Frodo's feet, he grovelled before him, whispering hoarsely. A shudder ran over him, as if the words shook his very bones with fear. "Sméagol will swear never, never to let him have it. Never. Sméagol will save it, but he must swear on the precious." "No, not on it," said Frodo, looking down at him with stern pity. "All you wish is to see it and touch it if you can, though you know it would drive you mad. Not on it. Swear by it, if you will. For you know where it is. Yes, you know, Sméagol. It is before you." For a moment it appeared to Sam that his master had grown and Gollum had shrunk, a tall stern shadow, a mighty lord who had his brightness in grey cloud, and at his feet a little whining dog. Yet the two were in some way akin and not alien. They could reach one another's minds. Gollum raised himself and began pawing at Frodo, fawning at his knees. "Down, down," said Frodo. "Never speak your promise. Now speak your promise. "We promises. Yes, I promise," said Gollum. "I will serve the master of the precious. Good master, good Sméagol." Gollum. Suddenly he began to weep and bite at his ankle again. "Take the rope off, Sam," said Frodo. Reluctantly, Sam obeyed. At once Gollum got up and began prancing about, like a whipped cur whose master had patted it. From that moment a change, which lasted for some time, came over him. He spoke with less hissing and whining, and he spoke to his companions direct, not to his precious self. He would cringe and flinch if they stepped near him and made any sudden movement, and he avoided the touch of their elven cloaks. But he was friendly, and indeed pitifully anxious to please. He would cackle with laughter and caper if any jest was made, or even if Frodo spoke kindly to him, and weep if Frodo rebuked him. Sam said little to him of any sort. He suspected him more deeply than ever, and if possible liked the new Gollum, the Sméagol, less than the old. "Well, Gollum, or whatever it is we're to call you," he said. "Now for it. The master's gone, and the night's going. We'd better start." Yes, Yes, agreed Gollum, skipping about. Off we go! There's only one way across between the north end and the south end. I founds it. I did. Orcs doesn't use it. Orcs doesn't know it. Orcs doesn't cross the marshes. They go around for miles and miles. Very lucky you came this way. Very lucky you found Sméagol. Yes, follow Sméagol. He took a few steps away and looked back inquiringly, like a dog inviting them for a walk. Wait a bit, Gollum, said Sam. Not too far ahead now. I'm going to be at your tail, and I've got your rope. I've got the rope handy. No, no, said Gollum. Sméagol promised. In the deep of night, under hard, clear stars, they set off. Gollum led them back northward for a while along the way they had come. Then he slanted to the right, away from the steep edge of the Emyn down the broken stony slopes toward the vast fens below. They faded swiftly and softly into the darkness. Over all the leagues of waste between the gates of Mordor, there was a black silence. That is the end, then, of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is called The Passage of the Marshes, and the first word is Gollum. And I hope that you're enjoying the story. We will continue it again, hopefully tomorrow, and we will see you then, and God bless you. Have a good night.